What would you do if, in the middle of a family lunch, you got a text that said, "Don't react. They're recording you"? That's exactly what happened to me. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon. The dining room smelled of roasted chicken and garlic bread, laughter bouncing off the walls as my in-laws exchanged stories about neighbors and business gossip. On the outside, everything seemed normal. But then my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I almost ignored it, until my eyes caught the message. Just one sentence. "Don't react. They're recording you." My heart skipped. For a split second I froze, staring at the words as if they would rearrange themselves into something less terrifying. Recording me. Ooh, why? I forced myself to look up. My husband's parents were smiling, sipping wine. His sister was scrolling through her phone, pretending to be bored. And my husband, he was watching me just a little too closely. The fork in my hand suddenly felt heavy. My mouth went dry. Every laugh, every glance around the table now felt fake, like I had walked into a play where everyone knew their message burned into my brain. And deep down, I knew one thing for sure. They're recording you. Whatever game they were playing, I was face neutral, forcing myself to smile as if I was still listening to my mother-in-law's story about her garden. But inside, my chest tightened with panic. My pulse was so loud I thought they'd hear it. I wanted to grab my phone again to text back. "Who is this? What do you mean?" But every instinct screamed at me to stay calm. If they were really recording me, any sudden reaction would confirm I had read something. Something I wasn't supposed to. So I played along. I stabbed a piece of chicken with my fork and nodded at my father-in-law's joke, though I didn't even hear what he said. My eyes kept drifting to my husband. His expression was polite, his laugh perfectly timed, but his eyes were glued to me, studying me, almost as if he was waiting for me to slip. That's when it hit me. This wasn't paranoia. This was deliberate. The question that haunted me was why. Why would my own family, people I trusted, be secretly recording me at a casual lunch? As the clinking of glasses filled the silence, I discreetly glanced around the room. That's when I noticed something. A small, black object on the side table, half hidden behind a vase of flowers. It looked like a decorative piece at first, but when the light hit it just right, I recognized the tiny glint of a camera lens. My stomach dropped. This wasn't a game. This was real. I wanted to scream, to knock the thing off the table and demand answers. But that text, the warning, echoed louder in my head. "Don't react." So I stayed quiet, chewed slowly. I smiled when someone made a toast. On the outside I was calm, composed, the perfect daughter-in-law. But inside, I was unraveling. I needed more information. And whoever had sent that message clearly knew what was happening. They were watching me too. Finally I excused myself. "I'll just go to the bathroom," I said with a polite smile. My husband's eyes followed me all the way down the hall. Once I locked the bathroom door, I yanked out my phone and typed back, "Who are you? What do you mean they're recording me?" The reply came instantly, almost too fast. "They're setting you up. Don't say anything. Don't sign anything. Just trust me." My knees went weak. I sat on the edge of the bathtub, phone trembling in my hands. Setting me up. For what? I thought about the strange questions my mother-in-law had been asking me recently. Questions about money, about whether I'd consider contributing more to the household expenses. I thought about the awkward silences between my husband and me after his late-night phone calls. The way his sister smirked every time I entered a room. Pieces were starting to click together, but the picture was still blurry. Then another message buzzed in. "Don't leave yet. Pretend everything is normal. I'll explain soon. But if they catch on that, it's over." Over. I pressed my hand against my chest, trying to steady the racing beats. What could possibly be so serious that my own family would record me at a Sunday lunch? I splashed water on my face and forced a smile in the mirror. When I returned to the rest of that lunch, I felt like every pair of eyes land on me. Every smile, husband raised every his glass casually. Every nod I gave was carefully measured. Told me everything. My mind screamed at me to leave. He knew I was close to finding out. But the stranger's warning repeated and for the rest of that lunch, one thought haunted me. Don't sign whatever was coming. I didn't know what they meant by signing. Family drama until dessert was served, and I had just my mother-in-law placed a folder on the table, right between the apple pie and the coffee mugs. She smiled sweetly, but her eyes sparkled with something sharp. "Since we're all here together," she began, "we thought it was the perfect time to finalize some family matters." My throat went dry. Family matters. I watched as my husband slid the folder toward me. His voice was calm, almost soothing. "It's nothing serious, honey. Just paperwork. To make things easier for everyone." I forced a smile. "What kind of paperwork?" His sister jumped in. "Oh, don't overthink it. It's just about the house, the inheritance, things like that. We've been meaning to sort this out for months." My pulse pounded in my ears. Inheritance. Oh, the warning text made sense now. They wanted me to sign something, probably to give up my rights. And the hidden camera. It was proof that they didn't force me, that I agreed willingly. Set up. I placed my hand casually on the folder but didn't open it. Inside, I could feel the thick stack of papers waiting for my signature. I knew one wrong move would ruin me. "I'd rather look at this later," I said with a smile, sliding the folder back. "You know me, I hate mixing business with pie." The table chuckled politely, but the atmosphere shifted. My husband's jaw tightened. His sister's smirk vanished, and his mother leaned forward, her voice gentle but laced with steel. "It really won't take long, dear. Just a signature or two. Don't you trust us?" The room went quiet. The air was heavy. Every face at the table turned toward me. That's when my phone buzzed in my lap. Another text. "Don't sign. Oh, get out as soon as you can." I gripped my fork to hide the shaking in my hands. Trust them. I wanted to laugh. Trust was the last thing I felt. I leaned back, forcing a light laugh. "Of course I trust you. But I also trust myself enough to read what I'm signing. I'll take this home, review it, and then happily sign tomorrow." Silence. A heavy, suffocating silence. My husband's eyes narrowed. His fingers drummed the table. Finally he said, "You don't need to review it. Standard. I already signed." That last part stung. He already signed. Did that mean he gave something away? Or worse, did he betray me, leaving me as the only obstacle standing in their way? I pushed the folder back toward him and smiled. "Then there's no rush, is there? You've already taken care of it." The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. My mother-in-law's hand hovered over the folder, but she didn't push it again. Instead, she gave a tight smile. "All right, dear. Tomorrow then." But her eyes told a different story. When lunch finally ended, I excused myself quickly, practically running to my car. My hands shook as I unlocked my phone, desperate for another message. And it came. "Good job. You bought yourself time. Meet me tonight. 9 p.m. at the old library parking lot. Don't tell anyone." I stared at the screen, heart racing. Whoever this was, they clearly knew everything. They were my only ally in this nightmare. The drive to the old library felt endless, sharp and dangerous. My hands were glued to the steering wheel. Much, if they had been watching so closely, heart racing so hard it hurt. Then who exactly were they? Every red light made me glance at my mirrors. A stranger, half expecting my husband's car to be behind this very family war, his mother's, pulling strings I couldn't see. By the time I pulled into the clock was lonely parking lot, and by tonight the world was already drowning in shadows. Or the library had been abandoned for years. Never escape. Its boarded windows and broken sign, a perfect backdrop for something dangerous. My phone buzzed. Stay in the car. Headlights off. Wait. My pulse skipped. They were here. Watching. But from where? Minutes dragged like hours until a figure finally appeared from the far corner of the lot. A man in a black hoodie, hands shoved in his pockets, head down. He walked quickly but didn't approach my car directly. Instead, he circled once, checking the lot, scanning the shadows. Only then did he tap on my window. I lowered it a crack. "Who are you?" His voice was low, hurried. "Someone who doesn't want to see you lose everything." Not exactly reassuring. He slipped a folded piece of paper through the gap in the window. "Proof. Take it." I hesitated before unfolding it. My stomach dropped. It was a photocopy of the very documents my in-laws had tried to make me sign, except this version had highlighted sections. Words that made me sick. Transfer of property rights. Relinquish all claims. Irrevocable. It was a trap. Exactly what I feared. "Where did you get this?" I whispered. The man glanced around before leaning closer. "They've been planning it for months. Your husband, his mother, his sister. They needed your signature to make it airtight. Without it, you still own half. They can't touch it." I felt my throat tighten. Ugh. He was talking about the house. The inheritance. Everything my parents had left me. "You knew I'd be at lunch today," I said slowly. "You knew about the cameras." "How?" The man hesitated. For a split second, I caught a flicker of something in his eyes. Hesitation, guilt, maybe even fear. "I used to work for them," he finally said. "I know how they operate. Let's just say, got burned. I don't want to see it happen to you." My mind was a hurricane of questions, but before I could speak, headlights swept across the lot. Panic exploded in my chest. Car was pulling in. The man yanked his hood tighter. "Don't tell anyone you met me. Not even your closest friend. If they find out, they'll destroy you. You have more enemies than you think." Then, without another word, he bolted into the shadows, vanishing between two crumbling buildings just as a familiar car rolled into view. My heart froze. It was my husband's car. I shoved the paper into my purse and started my engine, praying my panic didn't show on my face. He parked right next to me, his expression dark and unreadable as he got out. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his tone too casual. "Think. Yes. I needed air," I lied. "I drove around and ended up here." "What are you doing here?" He studied me for a long, uncomfortable moment before forcing a smile. Funny. I had the same thought. But I didn't believe him. Not for a second. We drove home together, silence thick in the car. My hand never left my purse, gripping the photocopied papers like a lifeline. Later that night, lying in bed next to him, I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. The stranger had given me proof. Proof that my husband and his family were plotting against me. Proof that the inheritance trap was real. But there was something the man said that I couldn't shake. "You have more enemies than you think." Did that mean there was someone else? Someone outside the family, morning, or maybe even closer, through the curtains, working to tear me apart. But I barely noticed. As I closed my eyes, slept. The stranger's words replayed in my head like a broken record. If the stranger used to work for my in-laws, then why risk the photocopied documents hidden in a shoebox? And if he was telling the truth about being buried beneath winter coats? What exactly had my husband's family done to him? Every time I walked past the closet door, my pieces didn't fit yet. But proof was a dangerous thing. It was power, but it was also a target. This was war. By noon, my phone buzzed again. No name. Just the same number. Meet me again. Different place. Bring no one. For a moment, I considered deleting the text, pretending none of this was happening. But deep down I knew I couldn't. If I ignored him, I'd lose the only lifeline I had. So later that evening, I slipped out under the excuse of grocery shopping. My husband barely looked up from his phone. His mother had been visiting more frequently these days, her sharp eyes following me around the house like a hawk. The stranger chose a coffee shop this time. Crowded, public, buzzing with the chatter of people who had no idea my life was hanging by a thread. He sat in the corner, hood down this time, a steaming cup in front of him. I slid into the seat across from him, my voice tight. Start talking. Who are you really? For the first time he looked me directly in the eyes. His features were sharper in daylight. Dark hair, tired eyes, a scar slicing across his jawline. He didn't look like a savior. He looked like a man carrying secrets that had nearly destroyed him. My name's Daniel, he said quietly. And if your husband knew I was here, he'd kill me. Maybe not with his own hands, but he'd make sure I disappeared. Froze. Why? Daniel leaned closer, lowering his voice. Because I used to work for your in-laws. I was their fixer. The guy they called when they wanted someone silenced, or a problem to go away. I did things I'm not proud of. Things that kept their family's reputation clean while they lived like royalty. His confession made my skin crawl. Why are you telling me this? Because I know how dangerous they are, he said. You think this is about inheritance? About property? Well, that's just a piece of it. They don't just want to cut you out, they want to erase you. Make you sign, then ruin you so you can't fight back. I gripped the edge of the table. Erase me. Why? What did I do? Daniel shook his head. It's not about what you did. It's about control. They see you as weak, as someone who doesn't belong in their empire. You weren't born into it, so in their eyes, you'll always be an outsider. They don't tolerate outsiders. My stomach twisted. I thought about the icy smiles at family dinners, the way his mother's voice dripped with condescension when she said my name. Cider. That's all I ever was to them. But why help me now? Press. If you worked for them, why risk everything? For a moment, Daniel's mask cracked. His voice shook as he said, because they destroyed me too. He told me how he once trusted them, how his loyalty to the family had cost him everything. His marriage, his career, even his freedom. When a deal went wrong, they pinned it on him, leaving him to take the fall. He served 2 years in prison while they walked away untouched, richer than before. I lost my wife because of them, he whispered, his knuckles tightening around his cup. She left me, took our daughter, disappeared. They made sure I had nothing. And now, I see them doing the same thing to you. Slowly, quietly, until you're nothing but a shadow of yourself. I can't let that happen again. Not to someone else. His pain was raw, heavy. For the first time, I saw him not as a shadowy figure in a hoodie, but as a broken man clawing for redemption. But before I could respond, his eyes darted over my shoulder. His body stiffened. We need to go. Now. I turned slightly and froze. My sister-in-law had just walked into the cafe. She hadn't seen me yet, but she was heading toward the counter. My blood turned to ice. Daniel grabbed my wrist, his voice sharp. Bathroom. Go now. Don't let her see you. I slipped away just as she glanced in our direction. My heart pounded as I locked myself in the stall, trying to control my breathing. I could hear her voice faintly, laughing, ordering coffee, chatting casually, completely unaware that her outsider sister-in-law was hiding feet away. After several agonizing minutes, my phone buzzed again. She's gone. Meet me outside, back alley. I slipped out the back door, where Daniel was already waiting. His jaw was tight. That was too close. You can't afford to slip. They're watching you more than you think. Then what do I do? Asked, my voice cracking. I can't keep living like this. Daniel looked at me. His expression grim but determined. You don't survive by playing defense. You survive by getting ahead of them. You need leverage. Something they can't bury. Something so big it makes them back off for good. I swallowed hard. And you know where to find it. Sleep was impossible. He nodded once. Every time I closed my eyes, but if you want the truth, Daniel's words replayed. If you want the weapon, they don't just want to cut you out. They want to erase you deeper than you ever imagined. Like I was the very heart of their secrets. Like I never mattered. My chest tightened. I was done hiding. Part of me wanted to Daniel was right, to forget it all, and every bone in my body told me he was. The part that had been then humiliated, for the axe to fall wasn't an option anymore. Was ready. I had to strike first. I whispered. Later that afternoon, I'm done being I met him in the parking lot of an abandoned warehouse on the edge of town. Good. The air smelled of rust and oil. There's Daniel no leaned against a beat-up car, and with that, the real war began. Eyes scanning the lot like a man who'd spent his life watching shadows. You came, he said. I'm not going to let them erase me, I told him, surprising even myself with the steel in my voice. For a second he smiled. But then he pulled open the trunk of his car. Inside was a small metal box, battered and locked with a thick latch. What's that? Yes. Insurance, he said. But first we need to dig. If we're going to stop them, you need to see the monster you're up against. He handed me a stack of old leather-bound files. Contracts, receipts, bank statements. Yellowed with age. Some stamped with company seals I recognized from my in-laws' empire. First I didn't understand. It was just numbers and signatures. But then Daniel pointed to one page. See this, he said, tapping a name. It was a construction contract from years ago, signed by my father-in-law. This project was supposed to fund a community center. Look where the money went instead. He slid another paper in front of me. A wire transfer, millions funneled into an offshore account under a fake name. My stomach twisted. They stole it. They stole everything, Daniel said flatly. Charity funds, government grants, even pensions. They've been building their empire on lies for decades. And every time someone tried to expose them. He paused, his jaw tightening. I was the one sent to bury it. The words made my skin crawl. He pulled out another file. This one was heavier, darker. Police reports. Names of people who'd accidentally disappeared after crossing the family. Whistleblowers. Former employees. One file was marked with red ink. Confidential. Inside was a photograph of a man I didn't recognize. Underneath it, a single word. Eliminated. I pushed it back across the hood of the car, my hands trembling. You're telling me they're not just corrupt, they're dangerous. Daniel's voice was grim. Very. And the worst part. Your husband knows. He's not just some pawn. He's part of it. Which means. His eyes locked on mine. He's not going to hesitate when it comes to you. My chest felt like it was collapsing. The man I shared a bed with. The father of my children. He wasn't just being manipulated by his parents. He was one of them. Daniel pulled the small metal box closer. This is where we hit them back. Everything I couldn't destroy before I kept. Records. Copies. Evidence they thought was gone. But to make it count we need more. Something current. Something that ties your husband and his family directly to these crimes. Fear clawed at me, but anger burned hotter. I thought about every time his mother had smirked when I spoke, every time my husband dismissed me as if I were invisible, every time I'd been pushed to the sidelines of my own life. Then let's get it, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Daniel studied me for a long moment, as if trying to decide whether I was truly ready. Finally he nodded. There's a safe in your father-in-law's office, he said. Inside are the current contracts, bank ledgers, and deals. If we can get our hands on even one of those documents, we'll have the leverage we need. But it won't be easy. That office is locked down tighter than a bank vault. How do we get in? Yes. Daniel's answer sent a shiver down my spine. We don't. You do. Silence hung between us. You're the only one who won't raise suspicion, he explained. You go in, you play the dutiful daughter-in-law. You find the key, the code, whatever it takes. Give me one ledger, one file, one piece of evidence. I'll do the rest. My pulse raced, breaking into their safe. The idea alone made me want to throw up. But deep down I knew he was right. If I wanted to stop living in fear, I had to step into the fire. I swallowed hard. When? Daniel's gaze was steady, unflinching. Tomorrow night. They're hosting a dinner, aren't they? My hands wouldn't stop shaking. The thought of it made me dizzy, but I forced myself the hum of voices. Good, felt Daniel said, like the whole house was holding its breath. This is where the game changes. I told myself to smile, but remember, to play the role of the obedient wife and dutiful daughter-in-law. If they catch you, they won't forgive you. Not I knew what waited upstairs. His words echoed in my chest like a warning bell. And I had one chance to get it. And as I drove home that night, the family had gone all out for where I'd been. Crystal glasses one thought kept pounding in my chandelier. Tomorrow night everything would change, wine flowing like water. My husband sat beside me, laughing at one of his father's jokes, as if he hadn't betrayed me, as if he hadn't chosen them over me. I kept glancing at the clock. Every second that ticked by was a second closer to my opportunity. Then, as dessert was being served, my chance arrived. I'll just go freshen up, I said softly, pushing back from the table. No one even looked up. No one ever did. That invisibility, the very thing that had always hurt me, was now my greatest weapon. I slipped down the hall, my heels clicking against the polished floor. My pulse hammered as I reached the heavy wooden door of my father-in-law's office. The one room in this house that was forbidden. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the handle. They caught me here. I pushed the thought away and twisted the knob. The office smelled of leather and tobacco. Books lined the walls, and the desk gleamed with a ruthless kind of power. My eyes scanned for the safe. Daniel had been right. It was hidden behind a framed portrait of the family. I pulled it aside, revealing a steel door embedded into the wall. Now came the hard part. I pulled the small slip of paper from my pocket. Daniel had given me what he thought the code might be, based on old habits of my father-in-law's. My fingers trembled as I entered the numbers. Click. The door opened. Inside, neatly stacked, were rows of ledgers, contracts, and thick envelopes stuffed with cash. For a second I froze. The weight of what I was seeing almost crushed me. Proof of everything Daniel had said. Decades of corruption staring me in the face. I reached for the most recent ledger, its leather binding still stiff when sound. The step. Someone was coming. My heart nearly exploded. I shoved the ledger under my dress, pressing it against my stomach, praying the fabric would hide it. The safe door was still open. I scrambled to shut it, nearly fumbling the lock in my panic. The footsteps grew louder, closer. I slipped behind the desk just as the office door creaked open. It was my husband. He stepped inside slowly, glancing around the room. His face was unreadable, but his eyes were sharp, searching. "Are you in here?" he called softly. I pressed my hand over my mouth to keep from breathing too loudly. My chest burned as if my lungs might give me away. For what felt like hours he stood there, scanning the room. Then, just as suddenly, he turned and walked out, shutting the door behind him. Waited. 1 second. In. Only when I was sure he was gone did I finally move. With shaking legs, I slipped back into the hallway and made my way to the bathroom, locking the door behind me. My reflection in the mirror looked like a stranger, pale, wide-eyed, sweating. The ledger sat on the nightstand beside me, evidence heavy with the weight of every secret when I returned to the dining room. No one page I flipped through revealed something worse. My husband looked at me a little too long, but he said nothing. Inside, I was names of people they'd ruined because tonight, for the first time in years, my husband's family wasn't just cruel, and I was holding the weight of it in my hands. By morning, I knew what I had to do. The next family gathering wasn't far off. My father-in-law had planned it himself, an elaborate brunch at the estate, with business associates and extended relatives invited. The perfect stage for his endless performance of power and control. Only this time the script would be mine. When we arrived, I played the part as always, smiling politely, nodding when spoken to, pretending to belong in a family that had always treated me like a stranger. But underneath my calm mask, my heart raced. The ledger was in my bag. My phone was set to record. And Daniel was already waiting outside with a backup plan. As the champagne glasses clinked and the speeches began, I stood, my hands trembling just enough to feel it but not enough for them to see. "Before we continue," I said, my voice sharper than I intended, "I think there's something everyone here should know." The room quieted. Dozens of eyes turned toward me. My husband froze, his smile faltering. I pulled the ledger from my bag and placed it on the table. "This family has built its empire on lies," I said, opening the book. "And I can prove it." Whispers. My father-in-law's face went red, his jaw tightening like a vice. "You don't know what you're talking about," he snapped, rising to his feet. But I could see the panic in his eyes. I flipped the pages, reading aloud. Bribes paid to judges, land stolen from families, money laundered through fake charities. Every word I spoke was another nail in the coffin of their reputation. My husband lunged toward me, but Daniel stepped into the room just then. His phone raised high. "Already live streaming," he said with a grin. "The world's hearing this too." Chaos erupted. Some guests shouted in disbelief. Others pulled out their phones. My mother-in-law sobbed quietly into her hands, while my father-in-law roared, threatening to have us both arrested. But it was too late. Daniel uploaded everything. Scans of the ledgers, voice recordings, proof tied to names and dates. The family's empire unraveled in real time. My husband turned on me then, his face twisted with rage. "You destroyed us," he hissed. "No," I whispered back, my voice steady for the first time in years. "You destroyed yourself the day you chose them over me." By the end of the night, the house wasn't a palace anymore. It was a tomb. The guests had scattered, the phones hadn't stopped ringing, and the police would soon follow. I stood outside with Daniel, the cool night air brushing against my skin. For the first time in years I felt free. "They'll come after you," Daniel warned. I looked back at the house, at the walls that had once held me prisoner. Then I turned away. "Let them try," I said. Because this time I wasn't the one being watched. This time I was the one holding the camera.